Okay, good morning. This is Ron, Sunday morning. We'll go ahead and get started. On yesterday, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about consciousness a little bit, organic consciousness, and what that means, and the nature, getting back to nature. We talked about uh, Upper and Lower Egypt, and we talked about that quite a bit. And I don't think we're done with that, the spiritual sides of that. Uh, we talked about what does it mean to create space? What did Adam create? We talked about amen, how we've misunderstood what that meant. Uh, and God and Pastor understand explained that to us. So talked about a number of things. Is there anything that we talked about on yesterday that you have questions about, or anything else that may have grabbed your attention?
Morning, Ron. Good morning, family. This is Evelyn.
Hey, Evelyn.
Hey, I always wonder what we talked about, what it means to be conscious and we're energy, that we're conscious and we're energy. So, and we always talk about we're not the body. So last night I did an experiment. I had all my lights out as normal when you're about to go to bed, when you're in bed, whatever, about to shut down everything. And I couldn't see my body. And I said, okay. And you know what? I've never thought about this, but I said, okay, so this is what it means, not having the body, because I couldn't see my body. But I'm like, okay, so this is what consciousness and energy means, that we are not the body. But I just thought that was an answer for me that I was been searching for a minute. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's a good example of it.
Sir?
I say that's a good example.
Okay.
Of what you were saying. That's a good example of it.
Thank you.
If we could ever get to that place where we aren't aware of the body, or that we treat the body as though we are not it, things do change in terms of the way we think, the way we process. So.
Evelyn,
Yes.
good morning. This is Audrey.
Good morning, Naj.
I had an experience, and I think I told you about it, where I couldn't feel my body, but I could feel connected to everything.
Yes,
So,
yes, we did talk about that.
Yeah. So yeah, it is, and it's our body is so quote unquote with us that we don't realize that we go way beyond that if we let ourselves.
I think that's a discussion that we should engage in. And I think that we experience it more than we know. And what I mean by that is you can be on the phone talking with someone and you can feel their energy. Or being on Zoom, you can experience the energy. Walking in a room, you experience the energy. And it's almost like your body is feeling it. You know, when you walk into a room and you realize that you shouldn't be there, or they don't want you there in that room, and you experience it, and you think you feel it in your body or in your gut, when we really actually are feeling it in our spirit. The energy is, we're feeling someone else's energy with our energy and not our body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I believe that we don't explore that enough. I do also believe that that's one of the major reasons that we have to look at the spirituality of Kemet, because when we study that, we find something that we don't find in Christianity. When we look at Kemet, what we experience or what we see is a huge, not a huge, I'm sorry, a expanded understanding of spirituality. And spirituality is not about living in the other world. Spirituality is about living in this world and understanding who you are beyond this body. The Kemites did not see themselves as their bodies. They saw themselves far beyond that. And if you look at the images, or if you look at the hieroglyphics that appears on the walls in the temples or in the pyramids, what you see is when they do a depiction of people, these are hieroglyphics spelling a word or making a statement, as opposed to what we do as photographing or taking pictures of ourselves. But they were more in tune with the true nature of who they are. They were in tune with what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like to live spiritually in this physical world. They were truly people who lived in this physical world, recognizing that they are spirit. And when this physical world offered challenges, they were able to rise to those challenges because of their understanding of the energy that they had amassed or that they had embraced. And that is the reason they were able to build flying machines. That is the reason that you can go into the temples and find etched on the walls a light bulb or electricity. You see, all of these things were there, or there rather, in Kemet. And the question becomes, why is it that everyone's so quiet about it? It's because no one can figure out how they were able to do what they did. And yesterday, when Barbara mentioned Wakanda, that was a great example, comparatively speaking, as to the advancements of Wakanda. Wakanda to me is Egypt, is Kemet, and the rest of the world being archaic in terms of its accomplishments. The people of Kemet were able to use that energy to build pyramids. We can't do that now. It doesn't mean we don't have the propensity or that the energy is lacking. That's not true. We are lacking. We are lacking in the way that we embrace the energy, embrace and express ourselves, because Christianity has taught us, has given us rather lip service to spirit, but not actual understanding of spirit. Does that make sense? So we have to we have to at some point in our lives make a decision that we are going to get beyond our bodies and get beyond our feelings and get beyond our limited way of thinking, get beyond the things that we want to bring into existence for our convenience, and begin to think on a broader plane. And processing on a broader plane puts us in a place of understanding the nature of spirituality. Because right now, when we talk about energy, we're not talking about energy as ourselves. We're talking about energy the way we used to talk about God, something separate from us. we talk about energy forces, energy fields, but we are not processing it in a manner that is supposed to be, meaning that these energy forces are who we are. But so we have to make every effort to change the way we speak, or to desire a level of understanding of speech, so that we are able to incorporate ourselves, or incorporate the I am of us in these discussions about energy forces. There are no pleasant, there are no realistic energy forces in Christianity at all. The closest thing that we've ever gotten to energy forces in Christianity is when Christianity, the word Christian was used, and the word Jesus was used by the enslaved people, and we were not referring to the Jesus that we were taught, because the Jesus that we were taught allowed people to lynch us. So the Jesus that we're talking about was actually the spiritual essence of deliverance itself. And that is the reason that Harriet Tubman was able to see what was coming before it got there. That's why she would go into a coma, go into a trance, and could see the direction that the slave chasers were coming, and she knew how to avoid them. Why is it that she could do that? And she called herself a Christian. She talked about God. She talked about Jesus, but it was not the God that we were given. It was not the Jesus that we were given. It was like we were talking about, let's say we were talking about Haru, but we're not, but that's not the language we speak. We were not speaking the Kemetic language. We were speaking English. But the image and the spiritual interaction that we had with the entities that we call Jesus was different than the interactions that we grew to have with Jesus. Because what happened is, the more quote unquote educated we became, the more we were in tune with embracing the Jesus or the God that had been given to us during enslavement. Yet we look back at and think about the people who were enslaved, and we think about why is it they did not do more to move themselves to a different place. It's not because they didn't want to, it was because it wasn't time to. And when we began to embrace the reality of the experience of Harriet Tubman, the reality of the experience of your grandmama, your mama, your great aunt, or whomever it was, their spiritual experiences, and make them yours, as the very least desire them to be. And then the experience that Audrey described a few moments ago becomes a daily experience that we have. And if you think that that's not possible, then ask yourself this question: why are you here to discuss and to understand spirituality, knowing that we are spirit, if you think that what we've just talked about is not possible? The impossible, or the unbelievable, or the miracle is that we don't realize who we are. That's the unbelievable thing. And when we see how life was when indigenous people were one with everything around them, and now the struggles that we have, the challenges that we face day in and day out are continuously increasing seemingly. And the reason they appear to be increasing is because we are pushing more and more into the area or the space of embracing the true essence of spirituality. But the biggest problem is we can't get ourselves out the way.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
how, well, in the church, people would say they were filled with the Holy Ghost. Does that, I mean, I know that's part of the energy, but how does that play a role?
If you do a historical study on the shouting in the church and the being filled with the Holy Ghost, you would find that in the villages in Africa, what you would find that these were dances that was done not because they were saying they were filled with the Holy Spirit, but because they were welcoming the presence of the ancestors into the village. And they were also embracing the reality that there is a deity beyond the ancestors. And the messages that we receive, the guidance that we receive from the ancestors is coming directly from the creator of everything that is. So the idea of shouting was something that was cultural, that was a cultural thing for us with a different meaning than what shouting has now. So the reason we move like that is because it's embedded deeply in our spiritual DNA.
Okay, so they just didn't realize exactly what it meant after a couple of generations being
Right.
away. Okay.
Yes. Yes. It was what happened is there were on plantations. See, they have the people who enslaved us have not always forced us to go to church. They had these little houses on plantations where we were expected to go to worship, and they would have an overseer there to make sure of what was being preached and what was being said, to be sure that there was no escape being planned. And when they became aware of what was happening in terms of what we call shouting, when they became aware of that, they used that as a weapon against the enslaved people, saying that this is what we're talking about. These barbarians, look at how they worship. These are pagans. This is pagan worship. They began to use that against us. And when they saw that they could not stop it, and when they saw that there appeared to be a different person walking out of that building after having worshiped the way they were worshiping, that's when they start forcing enslaved people to go to church and put them in the balcony, because they could control how they worship. And in doing so, they knew that they were not going to be shouting in their churches. And that disconnected us from the spiritual essence of our being. Does that make sense? Are there any other questions about that? A few years ago,
Hey,
go ahead.
Rep,
Listen.
how, when you say you have to go in the room or whatever, you got an aura about yourself. It touches a good aura, or you can touch a bad aura, or you can touch someone that is connected like you. Talk to me about that. And another question: when Jesus was on the earth doing what he was doing, he never did say, God, I pray, he never did say God and like that. He always said his Father.
He said, boom, yes. See, this is the thing. The story about Jesus is actually a story that's intertwined with the story of Abraham and everyone else. But the story about Jesus speaks volumes to us, and this is how I see it. When we look at what we call the Old Testament and the allegories there, they are describing to us the plight that we were going to have to endure to get to where we are now. And I'm not talking about now in terms of the end of slavery. I'm talking about now in terms of literally where we are now. And once we got to the place where we are now, the story about Jesus was telling us what to expect. If you trust a boon as I trust a boon, not only will you do what I do, but greater things you should do. So he was showing us what to expect. And when I say he was showing us what to expect, I'm talking about things like rebirth. The only way that you can have a fresh beginning in this earth spiritually, you have to be born again, meaning that you have to return to beginning before you're able to understand where you are at this moment. Does that make sense, Charlie?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, how you know that you at the beginning of a change?
Because you change. You know how right now, if we look back at where we were 10 years ago, 4 years ago, if we look back at where we were then and look at where we are now, we are in a totally different space, not place, but space than what we were then. Our processing, our spiritual unicity is different than what it was 10 years ago, because we were not talking about being Elohim. We were not talking about that because we believed that was blasphemous until we realized, until we were shown, and whether we embraced it or not, it was the ancestors who showed us, gave us, guided us to where we are. We were shown that we are Elohim. And then after we saw that, it took time to embrace that. And some of us still struggle with embracing it. But it doesn't mean that we don't know it. So how do we know that we're different? It's because now I have no problem saying that I am Elohim. I have no problem saying that, saying the things that I say about Christianity, but 10 years ago, I wouldn't. I remember many, many years ago in ministry, I remember, excuse me, thinking, and I told some people behind the scenes, as Nicodemus came to Jesus in the dark, I went to them in the dark, and I said, you know what? Jesus was married, but I never would say it publicly because I was not comfortable with saying it, because Christianity had put me in a state of bondage where I did not feel free to say it because I did not want to be ostracized. It's the same thing that there are people who are uncomfortable talking about the true nature of what happened to us at the hands of Europeans during slavery. And they're uncomfortable talking about it, especially in the presence of Europeans. And what happens is that we have been browbeaten into holding the truth within, not really telling a lie, but not being willing to express the truth because of the trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. And now we as a people are just getting to a place to do that. But we have to, well, what is happening is, I see some of the things that we were guilty of back in the day. Rather than being expressive of these things in a moment of exchange of ideas or discussing or even just talking about the history of it, we did it in a demeaning manner. We did it we were talking about Europeans the way they talked about us. When we saw things in Kemet that showed us who we are, when we saw things in the entirety of the Kushite kingdom, and understanding that it was the first, the largest, and the most progressive kingdom on the face of the earth, then and now. When we saw that, we compared that to Europeans in a very negative way, as opposed to understanding that it is our responsibility. When you see the truth, it's your responsibility to share the truth in a manner that it can be embraced without anyone seeking to tear down anyone else's culture or to demean anyone based upon their culture. Because when we talked about leadership, we did not differentiate between the leadership, the European leadership, and the lives of the church. We did not differentiate between them and the people, the Caucasians who had a mindset of true deliverance. And I'm gonna give you an example of this. Everyone who says that they want to help Africans become find a place of equality and justice in this earth, they don't mean that. They in 1849, there was a governor in California. California is becoming a state during that period, and the objective of the governor in Sacramento was to make sure that no Black folk could enter the state of California. Now, these same people were against slavery, but they didn't want us around them. Guess why they didn't want us? The miners said, if you allow them to come into the state, they are going to mine, they're going to be miners, and they are going to join together, and they are going to put their money together, and they are going to dominate us. They're going to have more control, more influence in California than we're going to have. But yet they were against slavery. Now, there were those in power who just didn't care for African people because they saw them as being less than human. But those who presented themselves as being what we call today had a totally different outlook on it. I hope that helps, Charles. I just don't know how else to say that. We have to make sure that we are the vanguard that seeks to change the whole of humanity, and not just learning stuff, not just being not just us being academicians or us. Well, I know more than you know. We're a word church, that kind of thing. We have to avoid that. Charles?
I got you. And
Okay.
don't forget the other question I had asked
Oh yeah,
before that one.
the one about the aura.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about auras, in regards to what we have learned in the last couple of years, we're talking about the unicity of energy. For example, I have the same energy as you do, but the energy that I have, I express it in a different way than you do. So when I walk into the mall, if I get a feeling, an uneasy feeling about the space that I am in, that is the expression of someone else's energy that is in contact with my energy. And it is my energy telling me, this is not where you want to be. And that's why when you walk into a room or a space and you turn around and walk out, or you leave because it doesn't feel right, that's the aura that we're feeling from each other. And when we talk about people are like animals in a way that they can sense when you're afraid. And if they sense you're afraid, how do they do that? Because of the energy that you are that is emanating from you, and your energy is in contact with the other energy, which is another way of saying that the spirit that occupies this body, the portion of Elohim that occupies this body, comes in contact with the portion of Elohim that occupies your body. And that's how we are able to communicate spiritually. The aura, why is it that you are able to see an aura? I have been told that I was doing a revival years ago, and I was told that they saw a light. They didn't see me anymore. They saw a light, and at the moment I didn't know what they were talking about, but I felt that I knew I felt different when I was doing what I was doing. So what is that saying? That is saying that your eye opened and you saw the essence of what was happening through the person who was doing what they were doing. In other words, you saw my soul. Does that make sense?
Yes. And Pastor, may I share something?
Sure.
In reference to what Charles stated, Charles gave us a beautiful illustrated example in terms of his experience, his life journey, in terms of seeing the light at the time that he was going through that death and life journey.
The accident.
The accident, yes. And so Charles, just right there, your energy, your experience, your life changed the atmosphere in terms of how I received it. And so that communication in itself, in terms of the spirit that you are, gave revelations to those of us who were able to bear witness to it in our own way. So hopefully, again, Charles, that's just another way of how I felt your aura, or I felt your spirit speaking in a way that how we visualize it through our senses, how we receive it through the pictures or the images. And again, I just wanted to share that, Charles. So I appreciate, again, how things have been said in the past, but how it's relevant to our discussion, to our spiritual enlightenment today. I'm done.
Thank you. Actually, George, that is a perfect example of the question that Charles raised. He is the answer to his own question in terms of the oral question.
Yes. And Pastor, if I may, just speaking on the subject that Kemet was the this epic center of spirituality. As we talk about the hieroglyphics, while we talk about, they say a picture is 1,000 words, right? And 1,000 words, we can look at a symbol and how it speaks in many ways. And as I give thought to us moving into this paradigm of looking at Kemet, there's just a lot that's manifesting, that's being created, and we'll get to that. But I'm just trying to respond to some things that I heard already. And when you mention about the church in terms of the origin of humanity and talking about the oneness, I thought about, again, Absalom Jones and Reverend Richard Allen, when they were at the church, in Philadelphia, and they had to sit in the back. But again, what does all this mean when we talk about going back to our beginning and looking at this portal or this gateway that we're now entering into, in terms of looking at the scriptures from our third eye, we read the scriptures, right? And
Yes,
I have read the scriptures, but I read them through my eyes. However, today, in the present, in the moment, we look at primary sources. We have to look at primary sources, you know, in terms of what is being not hidden, but what is before us. And I think that we're just digging a little bit deeper now to understand the spiritual and moral instructions that were given to us. So I just want to share those thoughts. Thank
Okay.
you for sharing those thoughts.
Thank you. I'm going to say this. First of all, let me reference the idea of the hieroglyphics in writings. 99 and 9/10% of the people on this earth are unaware that during the course of enslavement, especially in the Deep South, that the enslaved people developed a language that the enslavers and the people in the house who was not to be trusted, the Africans who were enslaved that worked in the house who couldn't be trusted, they did not know the language. And they would not teach it to them. And they used this language to teach their children to read. That language is Tut. T-U-T. Some call it Tut, some call it Tut these days, but back then it was Tut. Have any of you heard of that? That's not rhetorical.
No,
Thank you.
I have not.
That's the point of the matter is this. That language, I'm sorry, we have been told that people had to sneak to other places, or what they call those people in the North who were seeking to end slavery.
Abolitionists?
Abolitionists, yes. The abolitionists didn't even know this language. The only ones who knew it were the ones who they knew they could trust. And neighbors didn't even know. They were speaking the language to their children and didn't even know that the next door neighbors knew the language. That's how secretive it was. And I'm not talking about an abbreviated language like Pig Latin. I'm talking about a complete language with alphabets, with symbols to spell the words. That in itself speaks volumes about the ingenuity and the remembrance that enslaved people had about where they came from. No one knows how long that language existed in this country. Now, it exists to this day, but I'm talking about the origin of it. No one knows when it was when the language was first taught. No one knows that. That's how secretive the language was. Now, having said that, the things that George talked about earlier, just a moment ago, about Kemet and what we're going to get to, it triggered something in me. And what it triggered is this. If we get past ourselves, if we get out of our way, we have already been shown that we understand the Kemetic principles of spirituality. Friday night, when we spoke, there were 13 of us online. When we spoke Friday night, we did not use the Kemetic language in terms of all of the names of what was called the guards. We didn't do that. We talked about the spirituality of Kemet, but we did it in English, and we did it expressing the depth of our understanding of it. So what I'm saying is this: the day is going to come when all of these materials that we have purchased and that we have done research in, searching for an understanding of the Kemetic experience, we have opportunity right now to discuss in our vernacular the reality of Kemet. We have the opportunity to experience the depth of spirituality as the Kemetans did. We have that opportunity. These books that we have will gather dust on the shelves, because only thing these books have done is awaken what's been lying dormant in us for hundreds of years. And we are the key to unlocking this understanding. The key to doing it is to get out of our way and to do what we know was done by our ancestors. And I'm talking about not just the ancestors that we were in physical contact with. I'm talking about the ancestors of antiquity. The revelation of how to embrace the mysticism of Kemet will be uncovered to us. But we have to do something. We have to do more than being enchanted by it. We have to do more than being excited by it. We have to realize the reason for it. Why is it that it is imperative that our understanding of Kemet be far more than what it is? Why is it that we must embrace it in that manner? Why? The why lies in understanding the reason for the reason for the spiritual nature of Kemet in the first place. We are in this place. I mean, we are searching for this, and the reason we need it is so that we can change the world. Think about it. How is it that people from that part of the world, when I say Kemet, it's the center of spirituality, but that's not the extent of the kingdom. Because quite frankly, Egypt was not the whole area, land area. It was simply, Hakapata was a simple space that was occupied that was called the Hill of Ptah. But that's a different story. I mean, let's for a different time. We need this if we are going to accomplish the goal of changing the hearts of humanity. Just like the Kemetans travel all over the world. Why? The reason they travel all over the world was to not only populate the world, but to teach the world. If we are the tools in the hands of our Creator, if we are the vanguard of change, then we need to step back and do whatever it takes to uncover the mistress of Kemet. Right now, we have to do it with the books. because the books are a mechanism that helps us to peel back the layers so that we can see the depth of who we are. Meditation, embracing the reality of guidance from the ancestors, realizing that our knowledge, our understanding is not something that just appeared because we're smart. Realizing that these messages have always been with us. There is no way that a language could have been developed in bondage without the slave owners knowing or hearing about the language and squashing it by killing and punishing all the people who were speaking it. Could not have been done unless they were shielded by the one who created us for the express purpose of changing the world from what it is to what it was. What it is chaotic. What it was is order. We don't have to memorize the 42 principles of Mayon. We don't have to memorize them. Just read them and then desire to be it, just like everything else. We are where we are, not because we were great students in some class. We are where we are because of our genuine desire to get answers to the questions that we had been raising for years. That's the reason that we are where we are. Questions or comments, please. Well, is this clear? Can you see the pathway we must travel?
Yes.
Not only see it, but can you embrace it? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So anyway, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, Ron?
Hey, this is Rainey. I'm sorry. It took me a minute to unmute. So just so I'm clear, what you're saying, Pastor, is we had to be put in this place of discomfort where even those things that evolved because of our intelligence, like that language, had to be taken away so that we could we could be who we are in this time of chaos that needs to be here to up in the systems in place. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
exactly what I'm saying. When we talked about the 1619 project, and we talked about the nation being born on the sea, on the waters, a nation born on the waters that's different than any nation on the face of the earth, a nation that has never occupied the earth before, a nation that has never lived or experienced the chaos that we have experienced for the last 700 years. Why was it imperative that this happen? In order for us to be Elohim or Amon-Ra, in order for us to be that, in order for us to be what we were created to be, we have to create. Not the trees. We don't create trees. They're already here. We don't create bodies. They're already here. We create mindsets. Look at the mindset of the entity called Adam. Everything that Adam possessed in terms of thoughts, we possess. Look at the mindset with Jesus. Every thought, we have it. We don't process them the same way because we are indeed our brother's keeper, meaning that if all of us process the same, if all of us had the same thoughts and responded to them exactly the same way, then there would be no need for change. And if the processes was something that created horrific circumstances for the people, we wouldn't be able to change them anyway because all would be processed the same way. We process differently because of the free will that humanity has. It has the freedom to think and to process the way it chooses. It has the right to not only process the way it chooses, but to choose what they have an affinity for. So when we talk about bringing balance, we're not talking about everybody thinking alike. We're talking about everyone having at the forefront of how they interact with humanity, where everyone is responsible for not only themselves, but for the person next to them, meaning that humanity is responsible for humanity. And no one is suffering. We have been led to believe that we're always going to have the poor people with us. That's Christianity. That's not spirituality. So our purpose in the earth is to change the process of humanity so that we can walk in this earth with the assurance that we have been awakened. Adam has been awakened and realized that religion, materialism, is put us in a coma. And now we are becoming what we were brought here to be. And when Adam was in that predicament, and you've heard me say this before, I think anyway, in the garden, and I'm using these words very loosely. I'm using it because that's how when we think about it. The response was that entity has stopped becoming. When it says that entity stopped becoming, it was because it was no longer in the presence of the Creator in his own mind. If we believe that we are separated from God, and I'm using that loosely as well, as we were taught in religion, then we are at a standstill in terms of spirituality. We stop becoming. The moment we start getting answers to our questions by virtue of our desires, becoming motion, we went into motion again of becoming. Becoming what? Becoming everything that we were created to be, even though we did not know what we were created to be at that moment. That's what I'm talking about. We are doing something that has not been done in 1,000 years, actually 2,000. And that is flipping the script. we are putting spirituality before religion, as opposed to religion before spirituality. So anyway, as Barbara says, in a way, are there questions or comments?
Yeah, Pastor.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, whoever was
No, go
talking,
ahead,
you
Brother
can go
George.
ahead.
Go ahead, no, I'll yield.
Oh.
Go ahead, Brother George.
Okie doke. Then one of the things about Egypt that we need to discuss, or not Egypt, yet Kemet. Kemet had a very good ally as it relates to the land of Kush that today is called Ethiopia. And they had a very excellent trade because I believe Kush is either located near the Red Sea or the Nile River. It's one of those bodies of water.
May I stop you,
So-
George, for a second?
Go ahead, sir.
Kush existed from the northern portion of Kenya all the way up the east coast to what is now called Egypt, over to to Sudan. So when we talk about Kemet, Kemet means the land of the blacks. That's what Kemet means. Kush means black. What we call Egypt, or what is Kemet, was established by the Kushites during the height of the Kushite kingdom. It was the Kushites who redirected the Nile River. It was the Kushites who built the pyramids. It was the Kushites who wrote in hieroglyphics. It was the Kushites who inscribed on the walls of the temples the history of their existence in the earth. So it's not Ethiopia became Ethiopia because the Greeks called it Ethiopia, and the word Ethiopia means black. So all the words that were used by the Greeks and the Romans to reference portions of Africa meant black. In all the places in Africa that the Africans labeled also meant black. So the Kushite kingdom cannot be separated from Kemet, and Kemet cannot be separated from the Kushite kingdom.
And Reverend Richard, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And at that point in time in history, Kush was also under the leadership or guidance of a female. But yet nonetheless, though, that's an important part of it. You can't have a discussion of Kemet without acknowledging the land of Kush, nor can you have a discussion of Kush without acknowledging Kemet. And that's all I wanted to say. And just some other things just of Kemet. Kemet is one of 7 countries that it's a part of Africa, yet it borders Asia. And that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, my
Okay.
bad. Go ahead. That's all I wanted to say, Rev.
The 7 countries that I don't even know which ones you're talking about. However, if you are referencing a portion of the Middle East, there is no such thing as the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is in Africa. The countries that are labeled Arab countries, like basically Qatar, these are African countries. If you look at your globe, look at your map, and look at these countries and see where they are, there is a landmass that does connect to the broader landmass and from Egypt, where they cut the Suez Canal. But for geographical purposes, all of that portion of land is Africa. And we cannot join the course that has for many, many years made every effort to separate what they called the progressive portion of Africa from Africa itself. They named it something else. The Arabs, or the people who occupy Saudi Arabia and the other countries within that region, they are invaders. They colonized those areas and drove the people out. So I don't know what else to say about that, other than we have to be cautious in our expressions of land masses because of what we've been taught. And I've said this before, we've been taught that Europe is a continent when it isn't. It isn't. If you read, you would think that Australia was occupied by Europeans from day one. That's not true. And if we go back far enough in history, we will find that only the other land masses broke away from the continent of Africa. The center of life is the continent of Africa. Why do I say that? Without the mineral resources in Africa, there would be no world. Everything that's built. In other words, Patrice Lumumba says that Africa not only feeds the world, but it has built the world. It feeds the world because everyone makes money off of Africa, except Africa. That's what he was talking about. So, Audrey.
If I could just add to that, a few weeks ago, I was looking at Shem, Ham, Japheth, and sort of tracing their lineages. But it says Nimrod built Babylonia and Rehoboth and all those cities in Babylon. He built that. And he was the son of Cush.
Yeah.
So, and even the Bible talks about during the time of Peleg, whatever, one of those sons, the land separated. So, so yeah, it is part of Africa.
Thank you. You know the most ludicrous thing about the story of Cush is Shem, Cush, what the other boy name? Japheth. Yeah, whatever. Now, if you just say Christianity, would you mute 182? Would you mute, please? If you look at Christianity, Christianity says that Black people came from Cush, Jews came from Shem, and Europeans came from Japheth or whatever. So all of these sons are the sons of Noah. And all of them came from the womb of the same woman. So how is it that all of them are different race? That's ludicrous. You can, I'm gonna make a blanket statement. There is absolutely nothing that you have been taught from the perspective of Christianity that makes any sense, that has any validity, that nothing that you should embrace. You have to read, study for yourself, because if you look at the interpretations, they are full of contradictions. Full of contradictions. So what Audrey added simply undergirds the reason we have to be extremely cautious when we are talking about the doctrine of Christianity. And why is it I'm not mentioning Judaism or Islam? Because Judaism and Islam is not something that most of the people are familiar with. The practices of Islam and Judaism are not something that people are familiar with. And even with Judaism, they swear they have the lock on the Old Testament. But Judaism is just as bad as Christianity when it comes to interpreting scripture or translating. Because it was Judaism that translated Adam as Adam, one with capital letter and one with a small letter. Well, Adam, if you look in the Hebrew Concordance, the section of the Concordance Hebrew, the first in there, number 1 is Adam in small letters. If you go to the scriptures and look at the capital letter that they made a proper name for Adam, it refers you back to number 1. It says that is a root. Now, if they are spelled the same way, then how can one be the root of the other? How come it's not the same word? Those kinds of things that we have to be cautious about. And that is one of the reasons that we make every effort to say to you, be very careful when you're doing your research, because there are so many things that's thrown in that you can very easily miss. And they seem so subtle, but they can change the course of your trajectory when it comes to processing spirituality, processing for the understanding of spirituality. Questions, comments?
I have a comment. I read a lot, and if I'm not sure of it, that's why we have the platform to bring it to the family. So you, the teachers, the facilitators, can help give us understanding, and you guys will let us know that is not the correct information. So I appreciate what we have as a family and facilitators, because a lot of us, we do read stuff, and it's not true. I've did it plenty of times and brought it to y'all, and y'all have the information, and you told me, no, this is not it. This is what it really is. So thank you. I appreciate that.
You're quite welcome. And I can't reiterate it enough. We have study books, and right now, how many of you teachers have books that we studied for years, and now we're finding out that, especially when with the sages, they're not what we thought they were. I know I'm one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we found out they did not. Now, why did I say that? The reason I said that is this. How can I understand unless I have someone teach me? If you are making an effort to understand, and you are reading all of the stuff that we even read, it makes it more difficult for the teacher to uproot that. Why? There is a reason that there are teachers. Everyone does teach one, but every teacher teaches. And no teacher can teach unless that teacher is a student. And what I am saying is this: out of the teachers that the Creator has granted permission to not only cover, but to work with and be one with all of this time, is different than each one teaching one. It's very different. There are those who have been brought into the space of teacher, who have discernment, are able to see the nuances of what's being said that students will miss. That is the reason the allegory about Jesus, the allegory about James, the allegory about all these people in that New Testament, that is the reason it says something. Those who desire to teach will be what? If you fail, you beat within strikes, meaning that you are going to have trouble in this journey because you have to be like the Ethiopian eunuch. How can I understand unless I have some man teach me? That doesn't mean that you don't read, but it does mean that you are able to filter what you read based on what you've been taught. It also means that understanding does not come simply because you read. And I'm going to give you an example. Before there were any teachers under my tutelage, under my covering, whatever, I was reading. And I was doing all kinds of research trying to understand stuff. And I understood enough to get beyond Christianity. But I didn't get beyond it because I was afraid to. However, the Creator started doing something, bringing into the fold, bringing into the place where, the space where I had been placed, other people, and showing me that they are teachers as well. And I did not understand the magnitude of that in the beginning. But what I learned is this. Out of all of the research that I had done and all the things that I had seen, there was simply one seed that was sown in the midst of those who the Creator brought into the space that I occupy. And I have learned and still am learning more from you who ask questions, from the teachers who we interact with during our meetings. I've learned more from that than I could have on my own at any given time. What I'm saying is this: no one has the whole puzzle. There are pieces to the puzzle that must be put together in order for you to understand what you see. And I am very grateful for the Creator having put me in this space. And let me say that I have been hesitant about talking more this freely about the teachers, because I didn't want anyone to poison the well, thinking that I'm saying that we are superior to you. That's not what I'm saying at all. None of us would know anything without each other. What I am saying is that we are your servants. What does that mean? You can read anything you want to think what you want to think about it, but guess what? We can't do that. We cannot afford to embrace something because it sounds right or because that's what we thought it was. We can't do that. Our obligation is to the globe. and having a global obligation, we have to be extremely cautious about what we present in terms of our teaching. We have to be cognizant of the questions that comes to us. You ask me a question, and what do? I do my best to respond to it. And if I can't, I ask someone else, would you add to this? Do you questions about this? Those kinds of things. I don't know why I'm gonna have to take this time to say this. It doesn't matter the why. What matters is I'm saying it. We are going to meet more frequently because we have to be one with the mysteries, the mysticism of Kemet before we are able to share that mysticism with everyone else. You cannot teach what you don't know. And you should not teach what you don't understand. So that's another reason that the forum is open for questions and for comments, because there are things that I have brought to the group. There are things that some of you have brought that I brought things that I didn't understand because I was assured that someone was going to see more than I see in it. So I am no longer apprehensive about speaking or referencing the teachers who occupy this space. If you look at it from an Aramaic perspective or a Hebrew perspective, we are a rabbinated body. That's who we are. You are not sheep anymore. None of you are. Not just the teachers, but none of you are sheep anymore. You are disciples. And disciples are there to learn. And you know what happens when disciples learn. Each one teach one. But anyway, any questions or comments about that? Because I feel very deeply that we have to dispense with this American idea towards teachers. They are babysitters, or they are what we want them to be. No, we're not. No, we're not. All the indigenous people in the world respect teachers. And I'm saying that we are here for you. We are here for the Chinese. We are here for the Japanese. We are here for the Pacific Islanders. We are here for everybody. And everything that we teach impacts humanity worldwide. I'm done. Questions, comments? Maybe I should ask this. Are you able to embrace what I just said in reference to teachers? And I'm talking to the teachers as well. Is that did I describe who you are or who we are? Was it clear?
Or yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
That's who we are.
Yeah.
And the moment we cannot be that anymore, is the moment that we have failed and we have not fulfilled the obligation that we took upon ourselves. Well, we said in 2011, not on our watch. Humanity will not end on our watch. We made that commitment. And I suppose what I'm doing now is reminding us of that commitment. And when we made that commitment, we didn't realize what was happening. We knew it was a winter solstice, but we didn't understand what the winter solstice really means. When we made that commitment, the Son was in the process of being resurrected. We made that commitment during the period of the winter solstice, and 3 days after the winter solstice, the sun begins its trek back north, meaning that the light has resurrected and a new beginning has taken place. That's when we made that commitment. And now here we are. We have stepped through the portal of Kemet. Very few people have been able to do that without immense study, without being present in the midst of Kemet. Very few people have been able to do that. But the Creator has given us not just an understanding, but guess what? The Creator has given us permission to enter that space of understanding. And I don't take it lightly. And I'm sure that you don't either. I'm done.
Yes,
Go
good
ahead,
afternoon.
sir.
I have a
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I yield.
Well, the only thing I was going to tell Red, I remember when he was in a church and the oil that he was putting out, I was seeing it was just a big bright light pulsating every time he was stepping. So I understand what he's saying now. That energy that he was pulsating out of him was cleaning the air when he got ready to get to the podium to speak. And I thank you, Red, for saying what you said. That's what brought that understanding to me right then.
Thank you. Thank you. I just pray that all of this resonated with you. That's all.
Hi, this is Barbara. But I yield because I know that George wanted to say something before a minute ago.
Yeah, no, Barbara, thank you. And, you know, Pastor, when you mentioned 11, in terms of our reception or what I saw in terms of an image, if you look at and write 11, there's 3 gateways. There's 3 portals that one can enter and out of. And I think in terms of just when we say, when the student is ready to learn, the teacher will appear. There's the Kemetic term that speaks about Kepera Septepi. And all that is the process of becoming. And I feel and receive that we are like where we may have been like energy that was stagnant, energy that was at rest. But there's a magnetism, electricity that's occurring now that's creating an explosion or creating a move. I don't want to say the movement, but it's manifesting. And I think that when we can look at the creative manifestation of water, fire, air, the ether, in the earth, that's all simulating in a way where it's creating where we are and where we're moving to. So I just wanted to share that thought in reference to the process of becoming, continuing to evolve spiritually. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. Barbara Jean?
I was just going to simply try to summarize what I think I've heard, what I believe that I've heard this morning. We started with Evelyn. I believe one of the things that resonated with me started with what Evelyn said about our being more than the body. That and she gave that vivid example of not being able to see her body, but knowing and being aware of consciousness, what she was. And the body didn't even play a part in that. That helped her to know she's more than the body. So consciousness and energy, what we are. And then we talked about, you said that part of what we do is change mindsets. We've already talked in the past about how it didn't feel the same for us to want to have to participate physically in marches and things like that for human rights, those kinds of things. I mean, we did it at the time based on the knowledge we had at the time. But at a certain point, it didn't feel like something that we needed to do. So I'm back to what we were talking about, consciousness and energy. And what you said about our need, our purpose is to change mindsets, which brought us right back to 2 Corinthians 10:3 and 4, which talks about what our weapons really are. This really is a warfare of the mind, of thought, because thoughts are the things, are the fodder for transforming into speech and action. So if you get to the thought, the root of the thought, and you change the root of the thought, that ultimately affects the speech and the action. So when you said change mindsets, that just reverberated with me again. The fact that we don't have to be somewhere physically, because thoughts are energy and consciousness, and thought and energy occurs outside of time, outside of location, physical location, etc. And so it's a reminder again that our weapons of our warfare is not carnal. It doesn't deal with greed and seeing and manipulation and all of those things that are physical or carnal. It's more than that. The root of it is more than that. It's mighty through through the Creator, of pulling down those strongholds. And those strongholds are the thoughts. That's the stronghold. Everything roots back into that stronghold. And again, when you say our purpose is to change those mindsets, we change those mindsets by uprooting those thoughts and having the opportunity to replace those uprooted thoughts with thoughts of what is true. And that's one of the reasons why it's important to understand, Kemet, the spirituality before religion, because in that spiritual root is the root that we all need in our thoughts. And so finally, I want to read from the message, because it sort of says all of the stuff I've been just spouting out, but I don't know if it's resonating. But it says, the world is unprincipled. It's dog eat dog out there. See the physical that we see in that, the dog eat dog. The world doesn't fight fair. But we don't live or fight our battles that way. Never have and never will. The tools of our trade aren't for marketing, aren't for manipulation, but are for demolishing that entire massively corrupt culture. We use our powerful God tools for smashing warped philosophy, that's thought and thinking, tearing down barriers erected against the truth of God, fitting every loose thought and emotion and impulse into the structure of life shaped by, this says Christ, but it really means the truth. Our tools are ready at hand for clearing the ground of every obstruction and building lives of obedience into maturity. So that's what I've heard this morning, a reaffirmation that the bodies don't mean anything. It's the energy that we are. It's the consciousness that we bring to bear, the God consciousness, the consciousness of a womb, the consciousness that we had thousands of years ago that was rooted and grounded in spirituality. And it's only those roots from the spirituality that we can use to root out all of these these thoughts that are perverse, these thoughts that are not like the Creator. So we have to fight fire with fire, and that's how we do it, with the energy and the thoughts and our consciousness. That's what I heard as an affirmation in what we do today. Thank you.
Thank you. It does resonate deeply. Any questions or comments in reference to anything that's been said with emphasis on what was just said, I guess? Okay, thank you guys. This afternoon at 3, we have an appointment with West Hope in California. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. Ron?
Thank you. Great discussion. Good place to pause. You guys have a good day. And George mentioned something on yesterday that I really went back and looked at, and I think we get a chance to look at it. And that was Isaiah chapter 58, the last verse 11 and 12. There's a lot in there, so maybe at some point we'll get to look at that, because I think today we touched on a lot of that as well. But anyway.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm just letting you know to tell Angela you still gonna be getting back with her on her question.
Okay, of course. She's I don't think, is she on today? Because I thought she told me she had to work. Is she on today? Okay. Well, we'll take a look at that as well. So yeah, we don't try not to forget questions, Charles, but thank you for reminding me. Okay. All right, guys, have a great day. Thank you, sir. Have a great day, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Some of you this afternoon, and it's again tomorrow evening. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.